Henry Thomas Gaskin was born in Lichfield, Staffordshire, in England's West Midlands in 1891. As a boy, he excelled as a scout and enjoyed reading tales of highwaymen like Dick Turpin. But by his teenage years, his interest took a darker turn. In June 1906, aged 14, he crept onto a railway line and tampered with the points to alter the track alignment, hoping to cause a crash or derailment. Fortunately, no harm was done, but his father was fined 20 shillings for his son's offence. Just a month later, Henry was caught stealing a silver watch. This time, he didn't get away with a fine and was sent to reform school until he turned 18. By then, Henry Gaskin stood 5'8" tall with brown hair and blue eyes. In 1910, he enlisted in the army but quickly returned to his old habits and was discharged for stealing from a fellow soldier. He next found work as a miner in Cannock, about 11 miles from his hometown of Lichfield. Mining was a tough, dangerous and underappreciated job, and men risked explosions and cave-ins, spending their days in darkness, lit only by lamps or weak torchlight. In many tunnels, the ceiling was just 5 feet high or lower, forcing workers to stay hunched over, often leading to chronic back pain. Some miners stayed underground all day, while others were lucky enough to come up to the surface for lunch, where they would rest in a small wooden shack and fry eggs on their shovels. At this time, mines were privately owned with no national regulations, so conditions varied and corners were often cut by unscrupulous owners who wanted to maximise their profits at the expense of the miners' safety. Despite the back-breaking work, Gaskin still found the energy and the inclination to break the law. In 1912, he appeared before Cannock Police Court for terrorising young women with a wooden toy pistol and robbing them, emulating the audacious highwaymen he'd once admired in storybooks. Although he only managed to steal a shilling, he had enjoyed the thrill and seemed to relish the attention, gleefully recounting the incident in court. He was sentenced to 12 months in jail. When he emerged from prison in July 1913, aged 21, Henry Gaskin married 19-year-old Elizabeth Talbot, known as Lizzie, and the couple had a child together. But even fatherhood failed to curb his behaviour, and between 1914 and 1916, he served another prison term for burglary. On his release, he was immediately conscripted to fight in the First World War. Men with mining experience were in high demand in, or rather under, the trenches, and Gaskin was assigned to the Royal Engineers as a tunneller. His job was to dig beneath no man's land towards enemy trenches, working with heavy clay soils which were prone to collapse. The conditions were horrific, with low oxygen, flooding, and the constant threat of encountering German tunnellers digging in the opposite direction. Although he had never shown much respect for authority, Gaskin handled the dangers well and was promoted to the rank of sergeant. While her husband was away at war, Lizzie grew tired of being alone and started seeing other men. When Henry Gaskin came home on leave in October 1917 and discovered her infidelity, he was furious. During one particularly loud argument, their next-door neighbour overheard him threatening to shoot her dead. Although the war officially ended in 1918, it took months for all soldiers to be demobilised, and Henry's turn came on 1st of February 1919. Now older and more haggard, the war had left its mark on him. he'd been injured by a mine and even buried alive in a collapsed tunnel, but had survived to tell the tale. By the time he returned home, his marriage was beyond repair. The final blow came when he discovered that Lizzie had given birth to another man's baby just weeks earlier. The father was Monty Harris, a soldier stationed at Cannock Chase Army Camp, close to the Gaskins' home in Longford Road. Henry and Lizzie separated soon after, and she moved in with her mother, Emily Ann Talbot, at 72 Brindley Heath in the small mining village of Hednesford, about a mile away. Just before 2 p.m. on Wednesday 19th of February 1919, Emily Talbot received a visit from Tom Saunders, a stoker at the West Cannock Colliery where Henry now worked. Tom explained that he had met Henry in the Anglesey Arms pub after his shift, and Henry had asked him to deliver a note to Lizzie. The note read, "Meet me round the pool at once. Important." Lizzie knew her estranged husband was referring to the Hednesford pool, a large 27-acre body of water popular with fishermen, but she wondered why he was so eager to meet. She left the note on the hallway table, put on her coat and hat, and stepped out into the chilly afternoon. At around 2:30 p.m, Lizzie and Henry were seen walking together near the colliery on Rugeley Road, arguing as they went. It was the last time Lizzie was seen alive. By nightfall, she hadn't returned home. Her mother grew increasingly anxious, and when 11 p.m. came and went with no sign of her, she was frantic. The following morning, Emily Talbot visited Henry Gaskin to ask what time he'd last seen Lizzie. He claimed he had wanted to speak to her about getting a divorce, but denied seeing her at all that day, saying she had never responded to his note. Emily reported her daughter missing at Hednesford police station, and officers began making inquiries in the area. It didn't take long before witness statements began to surface, hinting that this missing person case would not have a happy ending. 2 officials from the Cannock Colliery reported seeing Lizzie the previous afternoon with a man near Hednesford Pool. The pair had appeared to be arguing, but then separated, with the man climbing a fence and vanishing into a nearby copse. Police also caught wind of the local gossip about Lizzie's new soldier boyfriend. Naturally, Monty Harris and Henry Gaskin became the focus of the investigation, and both were questioned. Monty provided a solid alibi, proving he wasn't in the area at the time, while Henry, by contrast, seemed indifferent to his wife's disappearance. The police had little concrete evidence beyond the note from Gaskin arranging the meeting, but they believed it was enough to act. On Saturday 22nd of February, they arrested Henry Gaskin on suspicion of murder. At first, he stuck to his story and insisted he hadn't seen Lizzie on the day she went missing, but later that afternoon, his tone changed. He asked the officers cryptically, "Is it possible for a search to be made for my wife without the people of Hednesford knowing?" When the police confirmed that it was, Gaskin continued calmly, "Well, I will take you and show you where she is. You will want 2 drags and 2 men to pull the drags in opposite directions. She's in pieces. I cut her head off and I tried to cut her legs off, but the sinews held them together." Henry Gaskin led Inspector Woolley and 3 sergeants to the gasworks in Victoria Road and pointed towards a cylindrical gas holder, an upturned steel drum used to store the town's coal gas supply. "Here she is," he said. The drum stood in a circular trench filled with water, allowing the drum to rise and fall as gas levels changed, with the water acting as a seal to keep the contents pressurised. Police began dragging the murky, foul-smelling water and soon found the headless body of Elizabeth Gaskin. As the search continued, Gaskin was returned to his cell and his wife's remains were taken to the mortuary. The post-mortem, conducted by police surgeon Dr. Butter, revealed that her abdomen had been ripped open, one leg nearly severed, her left arm broken, and a 5-foot length of gas piping forced down her throat, pushed in so violently that the far end was visible, having pierced her torso and emerged on the outside. Dr. Butter believed this was either intended to weigh the body down or had been done by design to act as a vent, allowing decomposition gases to escape instead of inflating the corpse and causing it to rise. Efforts had also been made to remove her breasts and legs. Recognising it was time to tell the whole truth, Henry Gaskin confessed everything. He admitted arranging to meet his wife at the pool to discuss their marriage, but the conversation soon turned into an argument. Lizzie wanted a divorce and planned to live with Monty Harris, but Henry wanted her to come back and live with him. They parted near the copse, and Gaskin had gone further into the wood, as witnessed by the colliery officials. But what the officials hadn't seen was that once inside the woods, Gaskin encountered Lizzie again and the argument reignited. He told her angrily, "You have had your pleasure while I've been in France. You dare tell me you'll go back to Harris? I'll send you straight to hell, where you belong." He then grabbed her by the throat and pushed her to the ground, where he started to kick and punch her, then strangled her until she lay still. He hid the body in the bushes, then went to watch a silent film with his brother at the Cannock Picture House. When Mrs. Talbot called on him the next day to ask if he'd seen Lizzie, he decided it was in his best interest to dispose of the corpse more permanently. He loaded a wheelbarrow with an axe, several sharp knives and some sacking, and took it into the woods. He pulled his wife's body from the bushes, removed her clothes, decapitated her, and hid the headless body in a nearby culvert. He went to the gas holder in nearby Victoria Street, climbing over a 5-foot-high wall to access the site, then dumped her head and clothes into the water-filled trench, which was around 15 feet deep. After the initial police questioning, Gaskin had grown restless and changed his plan again, setting out with his wheelbarrow to retrieve the torso from the culvert. Fearing the wheelbarrow would leave tracks, he abandoned it nearby and manually carried the body to the 5-foot wall. The wall's height presented a problem, so he picked up the piece of gas piping lying nearby and forced it down her throat lengthwise, not only to give himself a way of hauling the body over the wall, but also in a misguided attempt to keep it submerged. While puncturing the abdomen might have delayed flotation by letting gases seep out, without proper weighting it was unlikely to succeed for long. He then dropped Lizzie Gaskin's remains into the water-filled trench, collected his wheelbarrow and returned home. On the morning of 25th of February, police recovered Lizzie's head from the water. That same afternoon, an inquest was convened at the Cannock Council offices. Gaskin's written confession was read aloud, and the graphic details were so distressing that one juror fainted and had to be carried from the chamber. It didn't take long for a verdict of willful murder to be returned. The trial began at Staffordshire Assizes on 4th of July. Gaskin's defence barrister argued that he was suffering from insanity, and his mother told the court that at the age of 7 he had tried to strangle himself with a scarf and had always been strange. 2 former colleagues from the Royal Engineers Tunnelling Company said he had been blown up by a mine in Ypres and always behaved recklessly, but medical evidence did not support a claim of insanity, and there was no indication he suffered from shell shock or what would now be recognised as PTSD. Several witnesses described Gaskin as having a haunted look, yet in court he appeared perfectly calm. The jury took just over half an hour to find 27-year-old Henry Gaskin guilty of murder. For the first time during the trial, he spoke, simply saying, "I did not mean to kill." He was sentenced to hang, and his appeal was dismissed on 21st of July. Despite the horrific nature of the crime, Gaskin attracted a surprising degree of public sympathy. Around 6,000 people signed a petition sent to the Home Secretary Edward Short, arguing that Gaskin had been provoked by his wife's infidelity and that his wartime service tunnelling under the trenches in France should be taken into account. However, no reprieve was granted, and on Friday 8th of August 1919, Henry Gaskin was executed at Winson Green Prison in Birmingham by hangman John Ellis. Gaskin weighed 187 pounds and the drop was 6 feet 3 inches. Around 200 people gathered outside the prison to read the official notices of his death. The woodland where the brutal murder took place came to be known as Gaskin's Wood, within a triangle bounded by the A460, Rugeley Road and Valley Road, ensuring that the area's bloody history has not been forgotten. As for Henry Thomas Gaskin, he was many things: a petty criminal, a robber, a soldier, a miner, a husband, and ultimately a killer. But he's remembered in the record books by the sensational name the press gave him: the Hednesford Ripper. You've been listening to Prash's Murder Map. If you'd like to support the show, please leave me a thumbs up, comment or review. You can also join me on Patreon for ad-free audio-only episodes and sign up for my free newsletter so you can be the first to hear about the latest news and releases. I'll leave the links in the show notes. Thank you for your support, and I'll see you again soon for another true crime episode.